Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a game design document today that is, honestly, just mind-boggling in its ambition. We are talking about a ridiculously granular architecture that attempts to completely bridge hard biological science with esoteric metaphysics. I mean, it literally treats a character's digestive system with the exact same mathematical rigor as the cosmic architecture of the universe itself. Wild, right?
So imagine this. What if a game tracked your exact metabolic burn rate and your soul's frequency? We aren't just talking about your standard hit points and mana bars here. The source material we're looking at details a world where every single action, from swinging a sword to just having a casual conversation, is calculated as a literal transfer of energy. It tracks the exact amount of water in your cells, the viral load of an infection, and even the vibrational frequency of your character's consciousness.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit 5 sections. Section 1, the anatomy of a character. Section 2, mind, senses, and spirit. Section 3, the social battlefield. Section 4, surviving a brutal world. And finally, Section 5, the metaphysical samsara engine.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the anatomy of a character, flesh, bone, and calories. The foundation of everything in this world starts with the physical body, and the math here is relentlessly literal. The engine takes an incredibly granular approach to health. Limbs aren't just, abstract pools of hit points. They're literal containers of energy, calculated by tissue type. 1 kilogram of fat packs about 7,700 kilocalories, while bone contains roughly 2,450. So when a character takes damage, they are physically losing the energy stored in those specific tissues. And to heal, you literally have to ingest and digest enough calories to rebuild that exact tissue type. Now check out this number. Almost 9 million. 8,942,500 to be exact. That is the sheer scale of the caloric requirements the system demands to completely regrow a missing body part. It's actually calculated based on the real-world average cell turnover rate of 7 years. If you lose an arm, you can't just chug a healing potion and be fine. Your body has to generate and route millions of calories to systematically reconstruct the muscle, bone, and skin.
And getting those calories to burn requires exertion, which is tracked meticulously. The simulation uses real-world Harris-Benedict formulas to calculate your baseline metabolism based on height, weight, and age. But as you move, it shifts to dynamic heart rate thresholds. Push your character into Zone 5, which is over 90% of their maximum heart rate, and you aren't just burning stamina anymore. You're accumulating a massive 100% fatigue penalty and inflicting a tax on your literal vigor. It completely simulates systemic stress and oxygen debt. Moving right along to Section 2, mind, senses, and spirit, the psychological layer.
We're stepping up from the biological flesh into the mind, where the mental simulation is honestly just as unforgiving as the physical one. The crucial takeaway here is understanding this juxtaposition. Taking physical damage hurts your limbs and drains calories, but a mental or psychic attack targets a totally different system, your senses and your ESP. Your ESP essentially acts as your psychic health bar, which is calculated by combining your constitution and resilience. If someone attacks your mind, they're doing literal damage to your ability to perceive reality. This builds a pretty terrifying picture of sensory overload or deprivation. Every single one of your senses, sight, smell, hearing, touch, taste, temperature, has a specific tolerance level. If a spell or a harsh environment pushes you into extreme hyperstimulation, you're hit with excruciating pain and blinding light. Push it too far the other way, into extreme hyperstimulation, and you become completely numb, deaf, and blind. Psychology and perception require their own intense homeostasis, and if you get knocked out of balance, you're slowly drifting back to normal over a grueling 9,000 game turns.
This part absolutely blows my mind. The simulation actually tracks consciousness at the literal code level. The engine uses this fascinating grammar-based logic. While alive, a character is tagged as an NP sentient, an actor, capable of making choices and moving. But the exact moment of death, the function literally reclassifies the character. The AI is completely stripped away, and they become an NO, an object. In the grammar of this universe, a dead body is structurally identical to a rock. Brutal, right?
Which brings us to Section 3, the social battlefield, words as weapons.
Because in a world this deeply simulated, something as simple as having a conversation becomes literal psychic combat. Just like physical health, you've got social health, tracked via your rationale HP. This matrix dictates your emotional state across 3 axes: logos for logic, pathos for emotion, and ethos for credibility.
If you take social damage, you might get pushed all the way down to negative 100%, becoming totally irrational, cruel, or untrustworthy. And recovering from a bruised ego? Not quick. Your rationale drifts back toward a neutral 0 over another grueling 9,000 turns.
Engaging an NPC is executed exactly like turn-based physical combat. Step 1 is the introduction, which basically sets the cultural stage. Step 2 is the actual speech combat. You, as the initiator, combine your rationale state, your tone, which could be hostile, deceptive, friendly, or neutral, and your intent. Then, Step 3 calculates the damage. So if you attack with heavy logos, and their logo's defense is weak, you are dealing psychological damage directly to their rationale.
You also have this huge arsenal of speech objectives to choose from. Are you being diplomatic, which directly counters coercive tactics? Or are you using an interrogative approach to shut down someone being informative? Employing specific tactics like bartering or intimidation actually inflicts damage on the social battlefield. In fact, if the conversation gets heated enough, it can trigger a literal death battle covenant, locking both parties in an argument until someone's psyche is utterly broken.
All right, Section 4, Surviving a Brutal World. Rest, illness, and decay.
Because when you aren't fighting enemies or verbally destroying your peers, the universe itself is actively trying to break you down. What's super interesting here is how the game handles sleep. If you're just a standard mortal, you need a full sleep cycle, passing through light, deep, and REM sleep to clear your tiredness and avoid full-blown hallucinations. But as you master metaphysical chi cultivation, your soul actually begins to override your biology. Hit the golden core stage, and you only need 50% of a normal cycle. Achieve void refinement, and sleep becomes entirely optional. The metaphysical literally hacks the physical.
But hey, until you reach that godhood status, you can absolutely still catch a cold, and the engine tracks illness with epidemiological precision. Step 1 calculates the minimum exposure load needed to even establish an infection. Step 2 tracks the exact viral or bacterial growth rate. It actually uses real formulas mapping viral RNA copies per milliliter over time. Step 3 then calculates your systemic damage, translating the pathogen's R0 transmission values into literal exhausting fatigue accumulation on your character.
Even just taking a sip of water relies on deep physiological mapping. It doesn't just track some generic, boring thirst meter. It separates osmotic thirst, which is triggered by eating salty food and altering your intracellular salt balance, from hypovolemic thirst, which happens when you actually experience blood volume loss. Depending on your exact state, ranging from mild thirst to severe dehydration, your character suffers distinct, cascading systemic penalties.
Finally, let's zoom all the way out for Section 5, the metaphysical samsara engine coding the cosmos.
This is the macro-level architecture running the entire simulation, where esoteric lore meets raw programming code. This is where things get deep and slightly ominous. The universe is governed by the protogenitor JHM protocol, which dictates that everything operates on 3 entities: the architect, the hero, and the machine. If your character's torso takes damage, it represents the decay of the hero. If your head takes damage, it's the decay of the architect. The code itself actually has a mythology, treating environmental friction as an etheric drag within a fluid matrix rather than just a simple physics vacuum.
The engine defines basic existence as a continuous wave particle collapse. Every single action, from moving an inch to forming a chemical bond, goes through 4 distinct phases: creation, summation, destruction, and entropy. The documents wonderfully describe this as a saturated handshake between the abstract realm of forms and the concrete map of reality. Carbon acts as the structural bone, while a hydrogen and oxygen engine creates literal radioactive events of bond breakage just to drive basic motion.
Okay, let's walk through how this physics engine actually creates a random NPC's name. It doesn't just pull from a spreadsheet. It starts in Phase 1 as a wave state, a raw thought shape of intent. Phase 2 applies phonetic friction and cultural shifts to that thought. Phase 3 physically clamps the wave into a stabilized particle, outputting the actual name. By Phase 4, that name is registered across the universe's internal degrees of freedom. It becomes an irreversible entropic fact in the simulation.
Which leads us to this incredibly profound thought pulled directly from the source material's logs. When a name is generated and stabilized like that, the sin of ego is committed. You, the player or the observer, become the expert knower of that token. The universe has collapsed a wave of infinite possibilities into a single concrete reality just for you. So I gotta leave you with this. Once you observe a simulation at this level of intense, beautiful granularity, Can you ever go back to seeing it as just a game? I know I can't. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.